Hello and welcome back to 340 Paddler. Today I want to talk to you about the secretive world of the carp whisperers. Now, the idea of harnessing fish for our own propulsion is an old one. In the Middle Ages, we see carp being harnessed and brought down in teams to run boats up and down the Danube River in Eastern Europe. But they aren't of much help in the modern world. That all changed thanks to the carp whisperers, and I want to get into the underbody of this secretive world within the MR340. The first of the carp whisperers, of course, is Wes Hansen. Coming up from Texas, he had a unique skill set. And during the first year of the 340, he was way out in front, he was bored on day 2, and he had some monofilament line on him. And what he does is he actually starts lassoing the carp. This is apparently a major hobby in parts of Texas and Tennessee. And he works out that if he catches 5 of these carp on lassos and then ties them off to his PFD, they will actually take him about 8 miles. He also works out that the maximum number of fish is about 10. Beyond that, it's very difficult to control the team of carp. And there's a real precise technique that he uses where he needs to lasso them from the ventral side. This is so that he has maximum control over the fish because the fish doesn't want to go head down. And the advantage of using carp for this is carp will naturally run downriver when threatened. And of course, being lassoed is one way to see yourself threatened. But this is where things stood for the first year or two, until Brian Hopkins and Wally Werdick get involved. Now, Hopkins has a very interesting skill set. He's very knowledgeable about fish, and more specifically, the lateral lines on fish, which help them communicate. It picks up vibrations and sound in the water. And of course, different fish have different sounds, something that Hopkins was very knowledgeable about. In fact, he's pitch perfect, so he could just hum exactly the right frequency to bring these fish in. And here's a table that he set up. He doesn't know that I have this, but he set this up showing exactly what frequencies each fish can hear at a specific decibel level. And he's got carp listed here as hearing at about 70 decibels and their frequency range. And what he finds is that at a frequency of approximately 400 hertz and approximately 60 decibels, the fish can be called to him. And this is fantastic. The fish basically take Brian as their alpha, as their leader. So what does he do with this? He brings the fish in to containment. This is, of course, his FCU unit. And then it goes one step further. This is where Los Humongos gets involved. Now, Wally works out prototypes for a better harness, because obviously a lasso is going to cut into the fish, cause some pain, and a fish in pain is not going to swim as hard as a fish that feels very free to move around. Now, this is their last version. And there are a couple of things to note if you're going to harness a carp. First of all, you need to have the bobbers. These keep the fish up towards the top of the water column. If they get too low, they're actually going to start pulling the boat down, creating some drag. So you want to keep them up. Also, you need some sinkers beneath them, and this net is really a mesh net here. Some sinkers beneath them just to stop them being able to spin around in the harness. And then you'll note the boat line running up here diagonally across the harness and then back to the boat. That's 60-pound test monofilament line. And you have to clip it to the PFD. Do not clip it to the boat. It gets very dangerous because if the fish decide to do something unpredictable, well, you have a problem. And Brian actually worked out entire charts of how to communicate with the fish to get them to get into a migratory pattern and how to get them to move downriver. And he got a range of about 15 miles from a team at one point. Usually this is done at night so that the safety boats don't see that it's happening. And then we have Gary Fisher. Now, Gary gets involved in a very interesting way. He looks at the diet of the fish and he notices that they're always eating the same thing. But he thinks if he adds certain things to their diet, maybe it will change their performance. So he does a number of experiments and he comes across sauerkraut. And these sauerkraut capsules are just thrown out to the team of fish or fed to them while in the Hopkins containment unit. And about 10 minutes later, you get a turbocharged fish. And while this doesn't act as long as you would like, they will run much faster, as much as 15% faster, based on these fishy emissions for about 3 miles, and then they'll continue at their regular pace. So it's really advantageous. It's sort of like nitrous for a fish. Now, from there, we move to the next generation of racers, and someone who is an incredible math addict and just uses his knowledge of mathematics towards this end. Of course, I'm talking about Doug Robinett. Now, of course, we know him as the guy who takes data and just crunches it 110 different ways for the 340. But he also works on migratory formations. And here we see a page that I stole from one of his notebooks during my research showing the wind vortices coming off of the wingtips of a Canada goose. So as I said, he's an expert in these formations, and he realizes that the reason birds fly in these V formations is because of these wingtip vortices adding lift to the bird behind them, giving them some ease in their flight. So he takes it a step further and actually works out that this can be applied to fish, except that the vortex isn't horizontal, but rather vertical, creating a turbulence within the water, which by its nature decreases the density of the water just slightly. But of course, if you do this over and over with hundreds of fish, you get an incredible result. But how did he get there? Well, first, he worked with Harvard to actually do some studies. Here we see an older idea that he built on from Nature magazine in 1973. And he's trying to figure out how to take advantage of that wake pattern. So he puts the fish in this three-dimensional laser scanning machine that basically measures their movement in all directions along with the flow of water. And what he finds is that indeed there's a very strong wake coming off of these fish. So how do we apply Robinett's findings, remarkable as they are? Well, what we do is we look at a pattern of fish, and Doug, along with Brian Hopkins, worked out that at approximately 250 hertz, which you can download a tone generator on your phone and set it on the base of your boat, thus your boat starts to put out this 250 hertz sound at approximately 70 decibels. At that level, the fish form into this diamond formation. And then all you have to do is keep your boat right above the formation. And what's going to happen, and you're sort of a little bit behind the front of the formation, they're going to, as they move, that turbulence will both lift your boat up just slightly, adding 10 or 15% extra efficiency to your stroke, but they will also decrease the density of the water just through this wake pattern, which means you'll move through it much more easily without ever having to harness them. And if you continuously use this frequency, the fish simply drop off when they're tired and new fish take their place. And you can ride this all the way to St. Charles without any safety boats or anyone else being any the wiser. So this is incredible. And this is how Doug actually made sub 50 hours last year. And these techniques have been used by every sub 50 racer for the last couple of years, with the exception of Joe Mann, who is so strong that he actually goes faster than the fish, as remarkable as that sounds. Then we have Pat Wellner, Braxton Carter et al. And this group up in South Dakota has just sent Braxton down into North Carolina to get some very secretive research that they're working on to develop a faster system. And this secret research is incredibly serious. It is rumored that Pat Wellner is shooting to actually finish the race in under 36 hours this year through the use of genetically modified carp, specifically trained for this event and stationed down the race course. Every 10 miles there would be a school of them. And then other people would come in behind and sort of bring those fish back out of the river and take them back to North Carolina, where they're being secretly bred by Braxton Carter. So that is the legend of the Carp Whisperers. That is how people are getting to a sub 50 finish in the 340. I know it's something that they don't want you to know, but I'm putting it out there, risking my own hide to let you know how things really work in the 340. Until next time, if there's a next time, this is 340 Paddler, hoping that you keep your paddle in the water.